This video contains audio content only. There are no visual elements or images accompanying the audio. If you're expecting to see video footage, please note that this is an intentional audio-only presentation. We recommend listening to this content rather than watching the screen. Thank you for your understanding and enjoy the audio. Welcome to this deep dive into the chilling story of Pazuzu Algarad, a name synonymous with darkness, depravity, and the horrific potential that can lurk within the human psyche. We'll unravel this complex and disturbing case in easy-to-understand language, exploring the transformation of a troubled young boy into a self-proclaimed demon, the creation of a house of horrors, and the tragic consequences that followed. This exploration will take us on a journey through the dark side of human nature, examining the interplay of mental illness, the allure of the occult, and the devastating impact of societal neglect. We'll delve into the twisted bonds formed within Algarad's inner circle, the systemic failures that allowed his reign of terror to continue unchecked, and the lasting scars left on the community of Clemmons, North Carolina. Prepare to be both captivated and disturbed as we uncover the layers of this complex case. We'll examine the early life of John Alexander Lawson, the boy who would become Pazuzu, tracing his descent into madness and the factors that shaped his transformation. We'll explore the creation of his infamous House of Horrors, a place where darkness reigned and unspeakable acts were committed. We'll delve into the twisted relationships he formed with those who became entangled in his web of depravity, examining the motivations and vulnerabilities that led them down this dark path. This isn't just a story of individual madness. It's a story about a community grappling with the unsettling presence of evil in its midst. We'll explore the whispers and rumors that circulated around Algarad, the missed opportunities for intervention, and the systemic failures that allowed his reign of terror to continue. We'll examine the impact of Algarad's crimes on the victims' families, their long and agonizing search for justice, and their ongoing struggle for closure. By the end of this exploration, you'll have a deeper understanding of the complex factors that contributed to the horrors of Nob Hill Drive. You'll gain insights into the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness, the dangers of manipulation and the allure of dark ideologies, and the importance of community vigilance in protecting the most vulnerable among us. This is a story that demands to be heard, not for its sensationalism, but for the lessons it teaches about the human capacity for both darkness and resilience. It's a story that compels us to confront the uncomfortable truths about the shadows that can lurk within seemingly ordinary communities and the importance of recognizing and addressing them before they consume another life. The boy who would become Pazuzu. John Alexander Lawson was born under the California sun in San Francisco, 1978. A seemingly ordinary beginning, yet the seeds of something profoundly unsettling were already sown. While his early years remained shrouded in a self-crafted mythology, those who knew young John recall a boy marked by a disquieting strangeness. His mother, Cynthia James, was his primary caregiver, and their move to Clemmons, North Carolina, when he was just 2 years old marked a significant shift in his life. It was in Clemmons that John's emotional instability and behavioral issues began to surface, hinting at the darkness that would eventually consume him. Patricia Gillespie, the director of the documentary series, The Devil You Know, noted the difficulty in piecing together a true picture of John's early life, as he frequently fabricated stories about his childhood. He'd tell some he was from Iraq, the son of a high priest, weaving a tapestry of lies to obscure the more mundane reality. Yet, behind the facade of fabricated exoticism, a darker truth emerged. Those who knew him as a child described him as a little off-kilter, a little emotional, exhibiting behaviors that could indicate the onset of mental illness. Harming animals and early experimentation with alcohol and drugs became part of his repertoire, troubling signs that foreshadowed his later descent. John's descent into the occult began in his teenage years, a period of awkwardness and alienation for many, but for John, it was a gateway to a world of darkness and rebellion. The heavily Christian community of Clemmons became a backdrop against which he defined his own perverse spirituality. He immersed himself in the study of Satanism, finding a perverse comfort in its rejection of societal norms. The specific influences that shaped his fascination remain somewhat elusive, a mix of heavy metal music, horror films like The Exorcist, and the writings of Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan. He spoke of animal sacrifices and dark moon rituals, his words laced with a chilling conviction that disturbed those who heard them. His mother, Cynthia, recalled his fascination with Tiamat, a Mesopotamian goddess associated with chaos, a figure that resonated with his own inner turmoil. The outward transformation mirrored the internal chaos. John's appearance became a canvas for his evolving beliefs, a grotesque testament to his rejection of the ordinary. He began covering his body in tattoos, each design a symbolic representation of his descent into darkness. Polynesian moko tattoos, traditionally worn by warriors, adorned his chin, a tribal marking signifying his allegiance to a different kind of tribe, one united by rebellion and darkness. Celtic knotwork, historically associated with Viking warriors, marked his cheeks, further emphasizing his embrace of a warrior ethos, albeit one twisted and malevolent. Later, more overtly satanic symbols would join the collection: the number 666, a mark of the beast, and the word Lucifer, a defiant proclamation of his allegiance to the fallen angel. The tattoos were not mere decorations, they were a declaration, a visible manifestation of the internal transformation taking place. He filed his teeth to points, a chilling alteration that added to his already menacing appearance. This act, both symbolic and physical, served as a visceral reminder of his separation from conventional society. He had become something other, something monstrous. The final step in this metamorphosis was the legal name change in 2002. He shed the name John Alexander Lawson, a relic of a past he wanted to obliterate, and embraced the moniker Pazuzu Algarad. Pazuzu, the Assyrian demon of wind and storms, the malevolent entity that possessed Regan McNeil in The Exorcist, became his namesake. His chosen surname, Ayla Algarad, meaning the Lord of the Locusts, in Arabic, added a further layer of ominous significance. This act of renaming was not simply a legal formality, it was a ritualistic shedding of his former self, a symbolic rebirth into the persona he had so meticulously crafted. Pazuzu's social interactions became increasingly limited as his transformation progressed. He surrounded himself with a small group of like-minded individuals, outcasts and misfits who gravitated towards his dark charisma. He held court in his Clemmons home, a place that would become known as the House of Horrors, a haven for drug use, animal sacrifices, and other depraved activities. He claimed to control the weather, another delusion in his growing repertoire of self-aggrandizing pronouncements. He rarely bathed, claiming that personal hygiene stripped the body of its defenses, another sign of his detachment from societal norms. Pazuzu's mental health struggles played a significant role in his transformation. Diagnosed with schizophrenia and agoraphobia, he wrestled with a distorted reality, plagued by delusions and hallucinations. His agoraphobia, an abnormal fear of open or public places, contributed to his self-imposed isolation, confining him to the increasingly squalid confines of his home. While his mother attempted to get him psychiatric help, financial limitations prevented him from receiving consistent treatment, allowing his mental state to deteriorate further. The transformation of John Lawson into Pazuzu Algarad was a slow, insidious process, a descent into madness fueled by mental illness, a fascination with the occult, and a profound sense of alienation. It was a journey from a troubled youth to a self-proclaimed demon, a transformation that culminated in horrific acts of violence that would forever stain the quiet community of Clemmons. His story serves as a chilling reminder of the destructive power of untreated mental illness and the darkness that can fester within the human psyche when left unchecked. Chapter 2. The House of Horrors on Nob Hill Drive. 2749 Nob Hill Drive. The address itself now evokes a shudder, a whisper of the horrors that once festered within its walls. The house, nestled in the seemingly peaceful community of Clemmons, North Carolina, became a chilling epicenter of Pazuzu Algarad's descent into madness, a physical manifestation of his twisted psyche. More than just a residence, it morphed into a macabre sanctuary for his dark rituals and a haven for the lost souls he drew into his disturbing orbit. It earned its infamous moniker, the House of Horrors, through the sheer squalor, the unsettling decor, and the pervasive sense of neglect and decay that clung to it like a shroud. Stepping inside was like entering another dimension, a realm where the rules of hygiene and sanity were utterly suspended. The assault on the senses was immediate and overwhelming. The stench, thick and putrid, A nauseating blend of decay and filth hung heavy in the air. Garbage overflowed, a festering mountain of refuse consuming every available surface. Discarded food containers, rotting debris, and unidentifiable waste piled up in heaps, creating treacherous obstacle courses throughout the house. Adding to the horrific tableau were the animal carcasses scattered about. Decayed remains of rabbits, birds, and other small creatures lay where they had fallen, victims of Algarad's twisted rituals. Animal cages, once homes to living beings, now stood as grim monuments to their demise, still containing the skeletal remains of their former occupants. The air buzzed with hundreds of flies, both living and dead, drawn to the feast of decay. The walls themselves bore witness to the horrors within. Streaks of dried blood, a blood-like substance, as described in official reports, stained the surfaces, a grim testament to the violence that had unfolded within those confines. Satanic messages and pentagrams, scrawled in various colors, adorned the walls, a visual representation of Algarad's perverse beliefs. The words, "Evil will triumph," spray-painted over a doorway, served as a chilling proclamation of his twisted ideology. Broken glass and sharp instruments littered the floors, creating a treacherous landscape underfoot. Every step was a risk, a potential encounter with the remnants of Algarad's destructive tendencies. The blacked-out windows, perpetually shrouded in darkness, further amplified the sense of unease, sealing off the house from the outside world and creating an oppressive atmosphere of secrecy and isolation. Outside, the unsettling decor continued. An upside-down cross, a symbol of defiance and inversion of traditional religious values, hung prominently, a clear indication of the darkness that resided within. A sticker proclaiming, "Evil will triumph," affixed to the exterior, served as a final warning to those who dared to approach. The yard, hidden behind a fence, became a clandestine burial ground, where the remains of Joshua Wetzler and Tommy Dean Welch lay hidden in shallow graves, a secret the earth held for 5 long years. Those who had the misfortune of visiting the house carried with them the indelible scars of that experience. Bianca Heath, who stayed with Algarad for a month in 2005, recalled his chilling boasts about the bones in his backyard, stories she initially dismissed as fabrications, but later came to haunt her. An unnamed female friend of Amber Birch, one of Algarad's fiancées, described a scene of utter depravity. Feces piled up in corners, Algarad casually urinating in the same space, his constant nudity, and his unsettling, sexually provocative behavior. These first-hand accounts paint a vivid and disturbing picture of the house as a breeding ground for depravity, a place where the boundaries of acceptable behavior were utterly obliterated. The demolition of the house in April 2015 was met with cheers from the community. Neighbors, long terrorized by the rumors and the palpable sense of unease emanating from 2749 Nob Hill Drive, gathered to witness its destruction, a symbolic cleansing of the darkness that had plagued their neighborhood. The razing of the house was more than just the removal of a dilapidated structure. It was a collective exhale, a release from the oppressive atmosphere of fear and uncertainty that had lingered for far too long. The vacant lot where the house once stood became a testament to their resilience, a symbol of their hope for peace and a return to normalcy. The demolition was a cathartic act, a final, decisive severing of ties with the horrors that had unfolded within those walls. It was a declaration that the darkness had been vanquished, and the community could finally begin to heal. Chapter 3. The Twisted Bonds of Nob Hill. Pazuzu Algarad's magnetic pull towards the perverse extended beyond his circle of acquaintances, ensnaring 2 women, Amber Birch and Crystal Matlock, who would become his self-proclaimed fiancées. Their entanglement with him formed a twisted knot of infatuation, manipulation, shared dark fascinations, and ultimately, complicity in his heinous acts. Their stories paint a chilling portrait of vulnerability exploited, loyalty warped into something monstrous, and the devastating consequences of falling under the sway of a deeply disturbed individual. Amber Birch's transformation into Algarad's queen, his female extension, was a gradual but complete descent into his world of darkness. The specifics of their initial attraction remain obscured, but the available accounts suggest a shared sense of alienation and a fascination with the macabre. Algarad, with his self-styled satanic persona and pronouncements of power, likely offered Birch a sense of belonging and purpose she craved. He became her king, and she, his queen, a twisted fairy tale romance played out against the backdrop of the House of Horrors. Birch's involvement in Algarad's rituals went far beyond passive acceptance. She became an active participant, embracing the gruesome practices with a fervor that mirrored, and perhaps even surpassed, Algarad's own. She drank blood, both animal and human, a ritualistic act that bound her to Algarad and solidified her place within his twisted inner circle. She partook in the animal sacrifices, the killing and mutilation of rabbits and other small creatures, her hands stained with the blood of these innocent victims. She embraced the orgies, the chaotic and depraved sexual acts that unfolded within the confines of the house, a further demonstration of her rejection of societal norms and her complete immersion in Algarad's world. Crystal Matlock's connection to Algarad was different from Birch's, less intensely personal, yet no less disturbing. While she wasn't as deeply embedded in his daily rituals and the grotesque tapestry of life at Nob Hill, she demonstrated a chilling willingness to participate in his most heinous acts. Matlock was accused of assisting in the burial of Joshua Wetzler, one of the two men whose skeletal remains were unearthed from shallow graves in Algarad's backyard. This act, far from being a simple act of assistance, signified a profound moral transgression, a conscious choice to aid in concealing a horrific crime. Her motivations remain a subject of speculation, a mix of fear, loyalty, and perhaps a morbid fascination with Algarad's power. The dynamics between Birch and Matlock within the twisted hierarchy of Algarad's world are difficult to fully reconstruct. While both women bore the title of fiancé, Birch clearly held a more dominant position, her relationship with Algarad more intense and all-consuming. Whether there was jealousy or rivalry between the two women, or if they formed a perverse bond through their shared connection to Algarad, remains unclear. Their shared participation in his dark rituals and their complicity in his crimes created a twisted sorority, a grim reflection of the power Algarad wielded over them. The psychological aspects of Birch and Matlock's involvement are crucial to understanding the tragedy of Nob Hill. Both women likely possessed vulnerabilities that made them susceptible to Algarad's manipulation. Birch, described by those who knew her before her entanglement with Algarad as quiet and introverted, may have found in him a sense of belonging and acceptance she lacked elsewhere. Algarad's pronouncements of power and his creation of a twisted alternative reality may have offered her a refuge from the perceived inadequacies of her own life. Matlock's motivations are less clear, but her involvement suggests a similar susceptibility to manipulation and a desire for acceptance, even within a profoundly disturbed environment. The House of Horrors, with its constant state of chaos and its rejection of societal norms, may have paradoxically provided a sense of stability and belonging to those who felt marginalized by the outside world. Algarad, in his madness, created a perverse community, a twisted family bound by shared secrets and dark rituals. The tragic consequences of Birch and Matlock's allegiance to Algarad are undeniable. Birch, who admitted to shooting Tommy Welch, received a sentence of 30 to 40 years in prison. Matlock, who pleaded guilty to conspiracy to accessory after the fact to first-degree murder, served a shorter sentence. Both women, once drawn to Algarad's dark charisma, ultimately paid a heavy price for their involvement in his crimes. Their stories serve as a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of the dangers of manipulation and the devastating consequences of blind loyalty to a disturbed individual. The twisted bonds forged at 2749 Nob Hill Drive were not bonds of love, but rather chains of manipulation and shared darkness. Amber Birch and Crystal Matlock, both victims and perpetrators, became entangled in a web of horror they helped to create. Their stories, while disturbing, are essential to understanding the full scope of the tragedy that unfolded within the House of Horrors. They offer a glimpse into the dark underbelly of human psychology, where vulnerability can be exploited, and loyalty can be twisted into something monstrous. Chapter 4. Unearthing the Secrets in the Backyard. The whispers started subtly, like the rustling of dead leaves in the wind. Neighbors in the quiet Clemmons community noticed the peculiarities of 2749 Nob Hill Drive. The perpetually drawn curtains, the unsettling decor of inverted crosses and ominous pronouncements of "evil will triumph," the unnerving presence of Pazuzu Algarad himself, his face a canvas of tattoos, his teeth filed to sharp points. The stories circulated, growing more disturbing with each retelling. There were whispers of animal sacrifices, of strange rituals conducted under the cloak of darkness, of a house filled with filth and decay. Some dismissed it as the eccentricities of a troubled individual, but others felt a deeper unease, a sense that something far more sinister was festering behind those closed doors. As early as 2009, the rumors took a darker turn. Tarina Billings contacted the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office with a chilling account. Her father, Alan Billings, had confided in her about witnessing a body in Algarad's basement and assisting in its burial in the backyard. He described a gruesome scene, the use of cat litter and chlorine in a desperate attempt to mask the stench of death. According to Billings, Algarad claimed to have shot the man 10 times for being a snitch. Detective Foster, the investigator assigned to the case, followed up on the lead, questioning both Billings and Algarad. Billings, however, recanted his story, denying any involvement. Algarad, in a chilling display of nonchalance, allowed the detective to search his property. Despite the pervasive stench of decay and the unsettling atmosphere, no bodies were found. The investigation stalled, the whispers continued, and the secrets of Nob Hill remained buried. The unease intensified with the disappearance of Joshua Wetzler in July 2009. A former fiancé of Stacey Carter and the father of her child, Wetzler was known for his kind heart and free spirit. He was a devoted father, deeply involved in his son's life. His gradual withdrawal from family and friends, initially attributed to personal struggles, took on a more ominous significance in light of the rumors swirling around Algarad. Carter, haunted by a friend's cryptic warning that Wetzler was buried in Algarad's backyard, reported him missing to the Davie County Sheriff's Office in February 2010. The investigation, however, yielded no concrete leads, leaving Carter and Wetzler's family in agonizing limbo. Just months later, another tragedy struck. Tommy Dean Welch, a loving son and brother-in-law, vanished on October 3, 2009, after leaving his family home, promising to return for pizza and a movie. His disappearance sent shockwaves through his close-knit family, who knew him to be a dependable and caring man. The circumstances surrounding his vanishing were baffling, leaving his loved ones with a gnawing sense of dread. In a chilling twist, Algarad's own mother, Cynthia James, became a source of information, albeit a reluctant one. In November 2011, driven by a conscience burdened by the horrors she had witnessed, James walked into the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office and confessed that her son had killed someone. She described hearing gunshots on the night of Welch's disappearance, followed by Amber Birch's chilling command to return to her room. She recounted seeing Welch's lifeless body slumped on the couch, a victim of Birch's rage. Despite this confession, the lack of physical evidence hampered the investigation, and the secrets of Nob Hill remained shrouded in darkness. The breakthrough finally came in September 2014, when Matt Flowers, a friend of Algarad's who had been away on military deployment, returned home to a disturbing revelation. His girlfriend, Dixie Ross, recounted a horrific experience from 2009. She had witnessed Tommy Welch's lifeless body at Algarad's house, a victim of a gunshot wound. She described being coerced into helping Birch bury the body in the backyard, the chilling threat of joining Welch in his shallow grave hanging over her. Ross's account, corroborated by photographs of Welch's body and the freshly dug grave, provided the crucial evidence law enforcement needed. Armed with this new information, investigators returned to 2749 Nob Hill Drive on October 5, 2014. This time, the search was different. Guided by Ross's detailed account, they focused their efforts on the specific area in the backyard where she had helped bury Welch. Using shovels and other digging tools, they carefully excavated the earth, their grim task punctuated by the growing anticipation of a horrific discovery. The first set of remains emerged, skeletal and fragmented, a silent testament to a life violently extinguished. A short distance away, a second set of remains was unearthed, confirming the darkest suspicions. The remains were sent to the medical examiner for identification. The condition of the bodies, reduced to skeletal fragments after years of exposure to the elements, made identification a challenging task. Dental records and other forensic techniques were employed, and on October 13, 2014, the grim confirmation arrived. The remains were identified as Joshua Wetzler and Tommy Dean Welch, bringing a tragic end to years of agonizing uncertainty for their families. The discovery corroborated the rumors, the whispers, and the fragmented accounts, painting a horrifying picture of murder and depravity. The unearthing of the bodies was not just a physical discovery, it was a revelation, a turning point in the case. It transformed years of speculation into concrete evidence of murder. The condition of the remains, the shallow graves in which they were found, the accounts of witnesses who had seen the bodies before their burial, all pointed towards Algarad, Birch, and Matlock. The whispers had become screams, and the secrets of Nob Hill had finally been unearthed, revealing the full extent of Pazuzu Algarad's horrific reign of terror. The House of Horrors had yielded its grim harvest, and the long, agonizing search for truth had finally reached its devastating conclusion. Chapter 5. Systemic Failures and the Unheard Whispers. The unearthing of Joshua Wetzler and Tommy Dean Welch's remains in the backyard of 2749 Nob Hill Drive was not the sudden eruption of a nightmare. It was the culmination of years of escalating, aberrant behavior, fueled by untreated mental illness and tragically enabled by a series of systemic failures and willfully ignored warnings. The Clemmons community surrounding the house was acutely aware of Pazuzu Algarad's disturbing eccentricities, his descent into a self-proclaimed world of Satanism, and the unsettling atmosphere that clung to his residence. Neighbors spoke of a pervasive, creepy feeling, an instinctive recoil from the darkness they sensed emanating from the house. They acknowledged, in hushed tones, that, "Little Johnny just ain't right," a sentiment that hinted at a deeper understanding of the potential for violence lurking beneath the surface of Algarad's bizarre behavior. Rumors of satanic rituals, animal sacrifices, and even cannibalism circulated within the community, whispers carried on the wind, growing more disturbing with each retelling. Yet, these whispers, these premonitions of something profoundly wrong, were never fully investigated, dismissed as the ramblings of a disturbed individual or the overactive imaginations of a community grappling with the unsettling presence of the macabre in their midst. The failure to heed these warnings, to delve deeper into the unsettling rumors, proved to be a fatal mistake, a tragic example of how systemic failures can have devastating consequences. Law enforcement had multiple opportunities to intervene, to pierce the veil of secrecy surrounding Nob Hill Drive and potentially prevent the horrors that unfolded within its walls. In 2010, Algarad was charged as an accessory after the fact in the shooting death of Joseph Emmerich Chandler. Chandler's body was discovered near Donaha Park by the Yadkin River, a seemingly random act of violence. However, Algarad's connection to the crime, his harboring of the suspected shooter, Nicholas Rizzi, in his home, revealed a disturbing pattern of association with violence and a willingness to obstruct justice. While this incident did not directly involve the later murders of Wetzler and Welch, it provided a crucial glimpse into Algarad's character and his potential for violence, a warning sign that was tragically overlooked. The investigation into Chandler's death was cursory, failing to fully explore Algarad's role and the disturbing environment he fostered in his home. The opportunity to uncover the darker secrets of Nob Hill was missed, and the stage was set for further tragedy. The Forsyth County Sheriff's Office received a series of increasingly specific tips, each one a desperate plea for help, a warning of the horrors unfolding at Nob Hill Drive. Tarina Billings, driven by a sense of unease and her father's disturbing account, contacted the sheriff's office in August 2009. Her father, Alan Billings, claimed to have witnessed a body in Algarad's basement and had even assisted in its burial in the backyard. He described Algarad's chilling explanation for the killing, claiming the victim was a snitch who deserved his fate. He detailed the gruesome attempt to conceal the evidence, the use of cat litter and chlorine to mask the stench of death. Despite the gravity of these allegations, the investigation faltered. Alan Billings recanted his story, and the search of Algarad's property, though unsettling, yielded no bodies. The case was prematurely closed, the whispers silenced, and the secrets of Nob Hill remained buried, both literally and figuratively. Stacey Carter's desperate search for her missing ex-fiancé, Joshua Wetzler, provided another opportunity for intervention. Haunted by a friend's cryptic warning that Wetzler was buried in Algarad's backyard, Carter tirelessly pursued the truth, contacting law enforcement and sharing her growing fears. Her persistence was met with bureaucratic indifference, her concerns dismissed as the anxieties of a worried ex-partner. The investigation into Wetzler's disappearance was perfunctory, failing to connect the dots between the missing man and the increasingly disturbing rumors surrounding Algarad. The systemic failure to take Carter's concerns seriously, to thoroughly investigate the possible connection between Wetzler and Algarad, allowed the horrors of Nob Hill to continue unchecked. Even Algarad's own mother, Cynthia James, became a harbinger of the truth, her conscience burdened by the horrors she had witnessed. In November 2011, she confessed to a detective at the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office that her son had killed someone. She described hearing gunshots, witnessing the aftermath of Tommy Welch's murder, and her own paralyzing fear in the face of her son's violence. Despite this chilling confession, the investigation stalled, hampered by the lack of physical evidence and a seemingly inexplicable reluctance to fully pursue the leads provided by James. The failure to act on James's confession, to fully investigate the scene and Algarad's potential involvement in Welch's disappearance, was a profound dereliction of duty, a missed opportunity that allowed the nightmare to continue. These individual failures, the dismissed tips, the cursory investigations, the ignored confessions, all contributed to a larger systemic breakdown within law enforcement and the community. A culture of complacency, a reluctance to confront the darkness that festered within their midst, allowed Pazuzu Algarad to continue his reign of terror. The lack of communication between community members and law enforcement, coupled with potential biases and assumptions within the sheriff's office, created a perfect storm of inaction, a tragic confluence of circumstances that had fatal consequences. The community's hesitancy to intervene stemmed from a complex interplay of factors. Fear played a significant role. Algarad cultivated an aura of menace, his appearance, his pronouncements, and his rumored rituals inspiring fear and trepidation in those who encountered him. The social stigma surrounding mental illness also contributed to the community's inaction. Algarad's erratic behavior was often dismissed as the ramblings of a crazy person, a label that allowed the community to distance themselves from the potential danger he posed. There was a sense that little Johnny was someone else's problem, a troubled individual whose eccentricities were best left undisturbed. The systemic failures within law enforcement were equally complex. The understaffed and overworked sheriff's office, grappling with limited resources and a high volume of cases, may have prioritized other investigations, deeming the rumors surrounding Algarad less urgent. There was also a potential for bias, a tendency to dismiss the concerns of those on the fringes of society, those who lived in the less affluent areas of the community. The whispers of those deemed less credible were easily silenced, their warnings falling on deaf ears. The tragic deaths of Joshua Wetzler and Tommy Dean Welch were not inevitable. They were the direct result of a series of missed opportunities and systemic failures. Had law enforcement heeded the warnings, thoroughly investigated the tips, and taken the concerns of the community seriously, the outcome could have been drastically different. A more proactive and coordinated response, one that prioritized communication and collaboration between law enforcement and the community, could have potentially prevented these horrific deaths. The story of Pazuzu Algarad and the House of Horrors serves as a chilling reminder of the devastating consequences of complacency, the importance of heeding the unheard whispers, and the urgent need for systemic change within law enforcement and the community to protect the most vulnerable among us. The vacant lot where the house once stood serves as a silent monument to these failures, a constant reminder of the lives lost and the lessons learned. Chapter 6. The Reckoning and the Scars of Nob Hill. The discovery of Joshua Wetzler and Tommy Dean Welch's remains in the shallow graves of 2749 Nob Hill Drive's backyard ripped through the tranquil facade of Clemmons, North Carolina, exposing a festering wound of unimaginable horror. The unearthing of these long-buried secrets on October 5, 2014, triggered a wave of shock, grief, and outrage that reverberated through the community, leaving an indelible scar on its collective psyche. The immediate reaction was a visceral mix of disbelief and terror. Neighbors, long haunted by the unsettling rumors surrounding the house, found their worst fears confirmed. The whispers of strange rituals, animal sacrifices, and the unnerving presence of Pazuzu Algarad himself had transformed into a chilling reality. The once quiet street became a hub of media activity, the flashing lights of news vans illuminating the darkness that had shrouded Nob Hill Drive for far too long. The long-term impact on Clemmons was profound and multifaceted. The sense of peace and security that had defined the community was shattered, replaced by a lingering unease and a heightened awareness of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. The case became a constant topic of conversation, a shared trauma that bound the community together in grief and a collective search for understanding. The idyllic image of Clemmons, a place where families felt safe and neighbors looked out for one another, was irrevocably tarnished. The House of Horrors became a symbol of this loss of innocence, a constant reminder of the evil that had festered within their midst. The legal proceedings against Algarad's associates, Amber Birch and Crystal Matlock, began swiftly, the weight of the evidence against them overwhelming. Amber Birch, Algarad's self-proclaimed queen, faced the most serious charges. She was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Tommy Dean Welch, accused of shooting him twice in the head with a .22 caliber rifle as he sat on the couch in the House of Horrors. She was also charged with armed robbery and accessory after the fact to murder in the death of Joshua Wetzler, accused of helping Algarad bury his body after he had shot him. Crystal Matlock, another of Algarad's fiancées, was charged with accessory after the fact to first-degree murder in the death of Joshua Wetzler. She was accused of helping Birch bury Wetzler's body, a chilling act of complicity that solidified her involvement in the horrific events at Nob Hill Drive. Pazuzu Algarad, the architect of this nightmare, would never face trial. On October 28, 2015, just a year after the discovery of the bodies, he was found dead in his cell at Central Prison in Raleigh, North Carolina. He had bled to death from a deep, self-inflicted cut on his left arm, a final act of self-destruction that denied the victims' families the closure of a trial and the full accounting of the horrors that had taken place. His death was officially ruled a suicide, a final, chilling chapter in the saga of Pazuzu Algarad. The demolition of the house at 2749 Nob Hill Drive in April 2015 was a cathartic moment for the Clemmons community. Neighbors, some of whom had set up lawn chairs to witness the spectacle, cheered as the walls of the House of Horrors came crashing down. The demolition was more than just the removal of a dilapidated structure. It was a symbolic act of cleansing, a purging of the evil that had permeated the neighborhood for far too long. The vacant lot where the house once stood became a testament to the community's resilience, a symbol of their hope for healing and a return to normalcy. For Stacy Carter, Wetzler's ex-girlfriend and the mother of his child, the demolition brought a measure of solace. She expressed a sense of relief, a feeling that the evil had finally been eradicated from the place where her loved one had met his tragic end. The razing of the house was a tangible step towards closure, a physical manifestation of the community's collective desire to move on from the horrors of the past. The documentary series, The Devil You Know, released in 2019, delved into the complexities of the Pazuzu Algarad case, going beyond the sensationalized headlines to explore the systemic failures that allowed the crimes to occur and the lasting impact on the victims' families. The series shifted the focus away from Algarad's self-crafted mythology of Satanism and onto the human tragedy that unfolded at Nob Hill Drive. It gave voice to the victims' families, allowing them to share their stories of loss, grief, and their ongoing struggle for closure. Stacy Carter's tireless search for Joshua Wetzler, her unwavering determination to uncover the truth, became a central narrative in the documentary, highlighting the failures of law enforcement to take her concerns seriously. The documentary also explored the cultural and socio-economic context surrounding the case, examining the stark divide between the affluent suburb of Clemmons and the more working-class city of Winston-Salem. It highlighted how this divide contributed to the marginalization of certain individuals, creating a breeding ground for the kind of desperation and alienation that Algarad exploited to draw vulnerable people into his orbit. The series examined the failings of the mental health system, the lack of access to affordable and effective treatment that allowed Algarad's mental illness to spiral out of control, fueling his descent into violence. The case of Pazuzu Algarad became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers of untreated mental illness, the seductive power of charismatic leadership, and the devastating consequences of societal neglect. It highlighted the importance of heeding warning signs within a community, of taking seriously the concerns of those who report suspicious behavior, and of providing adequate resources for mental health care. The documentary emphasized the need for greater communication and collaboration between law enforcement and the community, stressing the crucial role that ordinary citizens can play in preventing such tragedies. The legacy of Pazuzu Algarad continues to haunt Clemmons, a dark chapter in its history that serves as a constant reminder of the evil that can fester within seemingly ordinary communities. The vacant lot where the House of Horrors once stood remains a silent testament to the lives lost, the systemic failures that contributed to their deaths, and the ongoing search for justice and healing. The story of Pazuzu Algarad is not just a true crime narrative. It is a reflection of the complex societal issues that can create the conditions for such horrors to unfold, a call for greater vigilance, accountability, and compassion in protecting the most vulnerable among us. It is a story that demands to be heard, not for its sensationalism, but for the lessons it teaches about the importance of recognizing and addressing the signs of darkness before they consume another community. The story of Pazuzu Algarad is a chilling descent into darkness, a stark reminder of the destructive potential of untreated mental illness, societal neglect, and the allure of dark ideologies. From a troubled childhood marked by emotional instability and animal cruelty, John Lawson transformed himself into Pazuzu Algarad, a self-proclaimed demon who held court in his House of Horrors in Clemmons, North Carolina. This house, a scene of squalor and decay, became the epicenter of his depraved activities, including animal sacrifices, drug use, and ultimately, murder. Algarad's ability to manipulate vulnerable individuals drew two women, Amber Birch and Crystal Matlock, into his twisted world. They became his fiancées, active participants in his rituals and complicit in his crimes. Their stories highlight the dangers of manipulation and the devastating consequences of blind loyalty to a disturbed individual. The murders of Joshua Wetzler and Tommy Dean Welch, whose remains were found buried in Algarad's backyard, exposed a series of systemic failures. Missed opportunities by law enforcement, ignored warnings from concerned community members, and a culture of complacency allowed Algarad's reign of terror to continue unchecked. The case underscores the importance of community vigilance, effective communication between law enforcement and citizens, and adequate resources for mental health care. This case study reveals the complex interplay of individual pathology and societal failings. It demonstrates how untreated mental illness, coupled with societal neglect and the allure of extremist ideologies, can create a breeding ground for violence. The tragic consequences highlight the need for early intervention, accessible mental health services, and a greater understanding of the factors that contribute to radicalization. Looking ahead, this case calls for a deeper exploration of the societal structures that failed to protect vulnerable individuals and enable such horrors to unfold. It underscores the need for improved communication between law enforcement and the community, a more proactive approach to mental health care, and a greater awareness of the subtle signs of escalating danger. The story of Pazuzu Algarad is a disturbing but crucial reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of ordinary communities. It challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths about the human capacity for both evil and resilience, and compels us to take action to prevent such tragedies from happening again. What are your thoughts on this chilling case? Share your insights and questions in the comments below. If you found this exploration insightful, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into complex and compelling stories. We encourage you to suggest topics for future videos, as we believe that learning from these dark chapters of human history can help us build a safer and more informed future. Never stop questioning, never stop learning, and never underestimate the power of knowledge to illuminate even the darkest corners of our world.